Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob in the Weeds, where I sit around and talk about what I'm thinking about while I'm pulling weeds in my garden. You know, I've seen a lot of other people do this, and they're sitting on porches or various other things, or sitting in a room and talking to a camera. But at least this way, I'm doing something productive while I'm talking smack. So, today, what I want to talk about is growing a garden. Now, I know that's everything I talk about. Can you get off the whole garden thing? I could, but that's the whole purpose of this channel, so that would be kind of silly, wouldn't it? So, I'm going to tell you, you know, in the past I have said, you know, you really ought to grow a garden. You really, you know, will gain some benefit from growing a garden. But what I want to tell you today is that, in my opinion, of course, now this is just my opinion. You, of course, can do whatever you want. I'm not here to control you. I tell you what you have to do. You got to do this, and you got to do that. But there's several reasons why I would say that everybody, and I do mean everybody that can, should be growing a garden. In the Navy, I'll tell you, we had a lot of guidance manuals, books that told you what you had to do and what the rules were and all of that. And there was an important distinction in all the wording, and that is shall and should. Okay. And essentially what I'm saying there is there are things that you had to do and things that you should do whenever possible or when practical. And for a lot of my time doing this channel, everything has been should. You should grow a garden. You should, you know, grow some fruit. You should plant some trees. So now I'm getting to the point where it's almost a shall. You really ought to. I mean, let me just say it's a should with a very strong emphasis. One, I can tell you that I've been through this. Right? I got my first job in the 70s, and I lived through the 80s on my own. That's when I first moved out. I got out of foster care. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I was kind of just dumped on the world. But I did get some outstanding advice from John Gertz and his wife, Ruth, my last foster parents. And they really helped me out a lot because they explained to me how life works. And if I had to give you the gist of that lesson that they gave me, it would be you have to provide for you and yours. You can wait for somebody to come along and rescue you, wait for somebody to come along and take care of you. That doesn't happen very often. Now, for those of you who weren't around in the 70s and 80s, which I'm assuming most of you weren't, yeah, I'm getting a little old, some bad things happened, all right? First thing was interest rates went crazy. Jobs were extremely hard to come by, particularly good paying jobs. And then, like now, there was a lot of fast food jobs and convenience store jobs, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs, by the way. And if I was to get hungry now, or my family was getting hungry, I'd go back to flipping burgers in a heartbeat. And I did. I mean, I worked at Hardee's. I worked at a convenience store. I bagged groceries. I did custodial work for the city at the community pool. I'm not too proud to do any of those jobs, and in fact, I've done most of those jobs. I worked in factories. I mean, I had a lot of jobs before I joined the Navy. And in fact, I will tell you that I was dead set against joining the military. I had well, I told you about John Gertz. Well, his father, John Gertz Sr., was a World War II Marine. I believe he was a sniper. But we used to go hunting, me and John Jr. and John Sr., all the time. And they were very impressed with my ability to shoot. I don't know if I ever told you this or not, but I'm really good with a gun. I was on Navy shooting team, rifle team, pistol team. I was actually a weapons instructor for a long time in the military, along with some hand-to-hand stuff, so on and so forth. But they had wanted, so he had basically called the Marine recruiters and told them, man, you really need to get this guy in the Marine Corps. And I was dead set against it, man. I was like, no way am I ever going to join the military. I do not relish the idea of getting shot at for a living. Just always seemed like a bad deal. All right, so we go out. You tell me who needs to be shot. I go shoot at them. Hopefully I'm a better shot than they are. Otherwise, they shoot me. Just seems like a bad deal somehow. So, there was no way I was going to join the military. But then things just progressively kept getting worse and worse and worse. Even professional occupations were getting to where they were hurt. I mean, I had a girl I dated back then that was a nurse, and she was just barely scraping by. I knew a lot of cops because I worked in a convenience store late at night in a small town, so they used to always stop in and we'd talk. And, you know, all of these people were having trouble, man. Well, the reason I talk about this is not really to give you a lesson on my past and history and where I've been and what I've done, but to tell you what I see looks a lot like what was going on back then. So, I mean, I'm no, you know, stock guru or anything like that, or economist, but if you really look, I think pretty much anybody can see the signs of impending craziness. We're back into wars again. You've got interest rates on the rise, and they're planning to raise them several more times this year. You've got supply chain problems. You've got gas getting really high, which was one of the issues back in those times. People don't realize just how important gasoline is, I don't think. You know, I know it would be great if everybody bought an electric car and we all did the environmental thing. I mean, I'm all about the environment. I am. I mean, that's a lot of the reason I've been doing this to date. You know, because I think it's good for the environment. Everything I grow puts oxygen back into the air, much better than just grass. And I'm trying to, you know, be as ecologically sound or as environmentally sound as I possibly can be. That's why I don't use fertilizer and pesticides and all that. I don't know if you noticed, but I just had a wasp flying around my head. I'm not looking to kill it, as long as it doesn't sting me. I'm trying to do what's right. But even more so than that, I would tell you that you may need to do what's necessary very soon. And again, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. This is just basics. If you really look at what's going on, this is a lot like what has happened in the past. Let me move the camera. Now, if you ever bought into a mutual fund, Mr. Wasp, you gotta leave me alone there, dude. They will tell you, or if you look into the stock market, they have to tell you that past performance is no indicator of future success. And that's a very true statement. The past is not necessarily a roadmap to the future. But there's some things that are going on that I got to tell you are very concerning. And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or a doomsayer or anything like that, but in my opinion, what's going on leads me to believe that if you have a garden, if you can grow your own food, you will be better off in the very near future. I mean, it does help the environment. I mean, every bit of produce that you get out of your garden, one, it gets you out in the garden, which is very healthy. There's been studies that show that just doing this, getting my hands in the dirt, are great for a lot of different immunity responses. It's great for your psychological health. This is just a really good thing all around. I mean, there's just nothing, there's no real downside except, you get really tired sometimes. And it can be stressful on your joints and so on. But there's tools to help you with that. But at any rate, so beyond that, there is also the ecological value, which everything that I grow here that doesn't get shipped is one small amount of fuel that doesn't get used to ship food to me. Which is great. But more importantly, and I think this is where I'm trying to go with this, is it allows me to be freer. What do you mean by freer? Well, the definition in my mind of freedom is the ability to take care of yourself and do what you want to do within limits, of course, as long as you don't hurt nobody else. But and I think that freedom is very important. And one of the worst things for freedom is dependency. All right. In the same way that if my kids come back and stay with me, they lose a bit of their freedom. I have rules in my house. And if you're going to live in my house, then you got to follow my rules. All right? And if I had to start feeding my kids, which by the way, my kids are doing fantastic. There's no need for that whatsoever, except for the one who does live here. But if I have to feed you, then it's only right that I should be able to expect certain things in return. Maybe some work in the yard, maybe pulling some weeds, planting some plants, mowing the yard, whatever the case may be, cleaning the house, some sort of payment for rent and food. Now, some people will do this without any requirements, and right now the government, it seems to me, is kind of on a path to look to provide more for the people of the country. I don't know if you all have been watching the Great Reset. Some of the things that politicians are talking about. But, there's some scary stuff people are talking. All right? You will own nothing and like it. Wait, what? You will own nothing in life. Basically, you want to own your own house, you'll rent it. You want to own your own car, you'll rent it. And then you become dependent upon corporations, governments, whoever, to have the things that you need. Even your home will be owned by somebody else, and you will just pay them for the use of it. Now, I will tell you, there are some benefits to renting. I just recently dumped $7,000, actually almost $8,000, into my other house because the air conditioner died. If you ever lived in Florida, man, you need an air conditioner. But you don't have to pay that as a renter. That's the responsibility of the owner. But the great disadvantage to that is that the best, or one of the best, and historically the most common way for people to pass on wealth to their next generation is through home ownership. And that, as many of you probably know, is being taken away. The ability to own a home is becoming less and less common. And that's not good. Yeah, you can rent, but I will tell you that rents go up. Mortgages do not, unless you get an adjustable rate mortgage, which is extremely foolish in my opinion. Words of wisdom from Jim Bob: if you ever get a mortgage, make sure it's a fixed rate mortgage. Never buy an adjustable rate mortgage. A lot of what happened in 2008 was due to adjustable rate mortgages and balloon payments that became due all of a sudden to people who could not pay them. So, at any rate, but like I said, this is a great way to pass down wealth. If you want to get wealth to your kids, giving them a home or leaving them a home is probably the best way to pass on your wealth. Or any portion thereof. Even if, let's say, you only own half of your home, the other half is still owned by the bank. If you got a $300,000 home, which is slightly below what the average home is going for here in Jacksonville, and you only own half of it, they might have to take a mortgage out to finance the rest, or they can sell it and get that money once you pass on. So it is the best way that I'm aware of to pass on wealth. So, and that is becoming less and less likely as more and more corporations start buying up homes and then renting them out. And this is the model for that whole Great Reset, the New World Order that they're talking about. And I know if you've ever read 1984 and some of these other books, you've heard about, New World Order. No, that's just I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but just a way of people talking about doom and gloom. But I've actually heard people recently, and I'm talking important people, not just some dude, talking on the internet, who are physically and actively talking about the New World Order. I'm like, wait, what? You guys are actually doing this in the open? You're actually saying this out loud? And more importantly, nobody seems to have an issue with it. Nobody's saying, wait a minute, what? What are we planning? What is going on? And that scares me. It's like a lot of people are asleep. They're just not paying attention. COVID and all of the rules that came with COVID became a great time and a great excuse to take away a lot of freedoms. To say, well, we're going to change this. We're going to make the world a better place. As soon as you start hearing that shit, you know it's time to head for the hills. But so people have actually been talking about the New World Order. This is the way things are going to be from now on, and it's going to be so much better for everybody. Like, really? I disagree. Another thing that's going on is you've got interest rates climbing, you've got fuel costs rising, and more importantly, you've got inflation. Because everything is derived from fuel right now. Now, you know, even as we move on and we get to the point where hopefully electricity provides more and better means of power, you're still going to have fuel costs. And as those rise, so does the cost of everything. Because there is nothing in your grocery store that was grown there, raised there, canned there. 99.999% of everything in that grocery store had to get on the back of a truck, back of a boat, back of a train, and make its way to that grocery store. And we as a people can no longer afford to be the kind of people who, when asked where does food come from, answer from the grocery store. Where else? So, then, you know, I really trying not to sound like a doom and gloom kind of guy and conspiracy theorist and all that, but we are closer to a real, legitimate World War III scenario than we have ever been in my lifetime. We are actively opposing the other major nuclear power. And I know China's got nukes, and India's got nukes, Pakistan's got nukes, but the only other real major nuclear power capable of laying waste to the planet is Russia. Us and Russia, that's it. And, you know, I mean, of course, that's with what I know. I don't have access to classified information anymore. And even if I did, I couldn't tell you what I know, because that's illegal and wrong. So basically, a lot of things are happening that are kind of scary. A lot of things that are happening have the potential to go sideways in a major way. And I think that if you live in this world today, which I'm assuming you're all alive or you wouldn't be watching my videos, then you really need to seriously give some thought on at least learning the skills to growing a garden. Now, even without all this doom and gloom coming about and bad things happening that I think might, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a prepper. I am not one that's sitting around. I mean, I told you before, if you've been watching my videos, I've lived through many ends of the world, okay? And this is not the end of the world. I don't anticipate the world ending unless we get into a nuclear battle with Russia. And even then, even the most dire estimates only put about, you know, a tenth to a half of the population of the world dying out. So that means a lot of us will live and will survive. And that's worst case scenario. I mean, obviously, best case scenario would be that shit never happens. But anyway, so I think more importantly and more realistically is things are fixing to get expensive. One of the problems with Russia and this conflict we got going with them is that Russia is a major producer of fertilizer. I mean, to the tune of like a third of the world's supply of fertilizer comes from Russia, apparently. So if that's the case, then you're going to see the price of food go through the roof. So everything that is grown in the United States is done so using fertilizer, for the most part. Now, of course, you know, home gardens and organic gardens tend to minimize the use of fertilizer, and a lot of places are trying to get away from it completely, but it's very difficult. I mean, it has taken me years to get this garden to the point that it is, and it still doesn't produce as well as gardens where people utilize a frequent schedule of fertilization with chemical fertilizers. And it'll probably be, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever get to that point, to be honest with you. I mean, it is getting better. My soil is getting richer. I'm incorporating long-term solutions to hopefully increase the fertility. But that takes time. All right. I'm also trying to make sure that I don't use anything that will kill off, you know, what progress I've made in making this a more natural, more sustainable, more long-lasting garden. But so as fuel prices go up and as fertilizer prices go up and fertilizer becomes more scarce, you could be looking at a serious, you know, food crisis worldwide, and particularly here in the United States, as we have sanctions that will not allow fertilizers from Russia to be sold here in the U.S. At least that's my understanding. All right, and either way, inflation is going up dramatically. I mean, again, you know, this is very reminiscent of the 80s, the 70s and 80s, man. I mean, where you had double-digit inflation, double-digit interest rates, and prices kept going up. I mean, my grandfather bought a 1976 Nova, brand new. And in 1976 or 77, I don't remember which, but I know that he bought that car because he was very proud of this. But he bought that car for $2,000. No, I'm sorry, $2,500. Drove it for 10 years and sold it for $2,650. Now you're thinking, man, he must have took real good care of that car. No, that car was a piece of junk. But that's just how much prices had gone up. So imagine if you were to buy a brand new $50,000 car today, and in 10 years prices had gone up so much that you were able to sell it for more than you bought it for brand new. And you're thinking, wow, that's insane. That's never going to happen. And that's just not true. It happened. My grandfather did it. And it wasn't that crazy either. I mean, it wasn't like he just, you know, took advantage of somebody. That was just the way things were. Prices had gone up so much that he was able to do that. All right, and we're looking at the same kind of underpinnings to the current economic situation, I should say, as what was going on back in the 70s. Limited fuel, interest rates rising, massive debt from the government, huge amounts of debt in the population. I mean, if anything, the average debt per capita has increased even more so than it was back in those days. And I'm telling you, man, if you talk to anybody my age or older, they'll tell you, man, the 70s and 80s kind of sucked, man. And it looks like we're going back there. So that's why, if I was to tell you, if you were to ask me, I would tell you, you need to grow a garden. Not you should, you oughta. No, I think you need to be honest, perfectly honest. I mean, I think if you don't start, you're going to wish you had. And I think this year, if things don't change dramatically, is going to be the beginning of the realization that, hey, you know what? Things are not looking good right now. And I think that a lot of people are going to wish that they had something growing in their backyard to save themselves money on their food bill. All right. I foresee that there's going to be, I foresee, like I'm some sort of prophet, but I can imagine that there's going to be difficulties coming up because, like I said, I've seen this in the past. This is, an experience I have lived through. I'm telling you, man, I did not want to join the military. I didn't have a choice. It was either continue to scratch by in my little town of Kansas, just barely making it, or do something dramatic like joining the military and getting that retirement income. Which I did, and I'm glad I did, because I will be okay. As this thing progresses forward and whatever happens, happens, short of somebody dropping bombs on my house, I should be fine. But not everybody's going to be in that boat. So, and that's why I'm telling you, man, of all times in the recent past, this is the time where I would tell you, you need to grow a garden. Not you should grow a garden, you ought to grow a garden, you might want to grow a garden. I'm going to tell you that I think that in the very near future, if you don't, you're going to smack yourself for not waking up and doing it. Now, with that being said, don't break the bank trying to grow a garden. I mean, one of the problems I've seen a lot of people talk about is, well, man, I'd grow a garden, but man, that costs too much. I'm like, man, that is just totally counterintuitive to me, because I grew up when people grew a garden because they couldn't afford to buy food. When people grew their own food because it was cheaper by far than buying food, which is still the way I garden. Now, I did lay out some money up front for some, facilities and such like that. But you can totally do it without it. I mean, if you look at this garden here, I am growing food. And there's really no investment in this except for compost and seeds. All right. This garden doesn't have a fence around it, but it did get eaten up by the ducks, I'll tell you that. But as the grass starts to grow, they eat less and less. Start to go back out into the grass and eat. And as the plants get bigger, but this garden was essentially free. I dug up a spot in my yard, and then put some compost in it, and then put some seeds in it. The only real cost was the seeds. But all of these seeds, let's see, what do I got here? So I've got kohlrabi, which I bought last year. I've got my daikon radishes, which I bought last year. And the potatoes, well, some of the potatoes I put in here were store-bought. So, total from this year's expenditures, I've got about $5 worth of potatoes that I use for seed. And a lot of potatoes in here were actually gifted to me. The seed potatoes were gifted to me by my neighbor because he had more than he could plant, which he got from another source, which cost him nothing. Which is a great way, by the way, of teaming up and working together, is trading out seeds and plants. You know, like I've given him a few plants and he's given me a few plants and seeds and such, and we share that way. So I'll be honest with you, most cases, I mean, well, okay, I won't say most cases. In some cases, you end up with more seed than you can use in one season. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes here lately, I've seen a lot of seed companies getting cheap, where they're, you know, not giving you the amount of seed that you were expecting or that you'd seen in the past. You know, because it's a better profit. And, you know, once again, they're probably having to pay people more. They're probably having to pay more for inputs to grow the seed and so on. So they can keep the prices low and lower the amount of seeds. Which I don't know if you ever noticed, but the size of coffee jugs, I mean, by that I mean coffee grounds, cans of coffee grounds, has, you know, been getting smaller and smaller over the years. So you're still paying the same amount for the jug, but you're getting a lot less coffee for your money. That's just one example. But you're going to see that more and more, where people are trying to squeeze a profit out of a bad situation however they can. And you know, I mean, it's not the farmers. I'm going to tell you, I've known a bunch of farmers, and most farmers are not wealthy. Now, there are a few out there, but a lot of farmers are getting by same as you and me. Now, don't get me wrong, if you looked at net worth, I mean, land is hugely expensive and very valuable, so if you look at what they own and what it's actually worth, they have a lot of wealth, but they also can't afford to sell it because, you know, if you're trying to be a farmer, you need all the land you can get to grow as much as you can so you can make a profit. That's just the way it works. But at any rate, really strongly suggest, recommend, advise, caution, whatever you want to take it as, that you start growing a garden. Now, is this self-serving? Well, yeah, of course. You know, more of you guys out there growing a garden, the more I got people watching my videos. But I got to tell you, I've never gotten paid by YouTube, not a dime, not yet. Maybe one day, we'll see. Not one of my major concerns. I don't really do this for the money. I mean, the amount of money I've put into just editing alone, I could have had a part-time job and made a lot of money. A lot more money than I made from YouTube anyway. I do have some skills. But, like I said, I highly recommend it. And, you know, if for nothing else, I mean, people are so stressed out right now. You know, because they're seeing all this. They're seeing what looks like it could be a war coming up, a major war. You know, maybe a world war. They're seeing inflation. They're seeing issues and problems. They're looking at, you know, their work, asking more and more and more. I mean, do you know that like 70% of Americans don't take their time off? 70% don't take the time off, the vacation time, the PTO time that they are allowed. Why? Because if you want to get ahead, you want to spend every waking moment that you have at work. Man, I'm like, oh, hell no. I have used every bit of time off I possibly could. And then I retired early, so I could get even more. But that stresses people out, you know, and people are dealing with a huge amount of stress right now. Kind of like the 70s and 80s. And if the economy keeps on moving downward like it has been, costs keep going up, inflation keeps going up, wages don't keep pace, then the stress is going to get even worse. And I can't think of any way that's better at relieving stress than going out in the garden, playing in the dirt. So, if for no other reason than to relieve stress, I mean, gardening is a very great pastime. I will tell you, my grandfather was a farmer, and he moved to town, and he got stressed out. At one point, he was so stressed and worried about life because it had been years since he was a bachelor on his own. And so he stopped feeding himself as well as he should have. He really was going downhill. So my aunt, who was his executor, I don't know if my mother was involved in it or not, but made the determination that he needed to go into a care facility. And even there, he was somewhat stressed when he first got there. And you could see, like I said, you could see the health going away. You could see him struggling. You can see it in the way he talked and the way he, you know, got around, and he was losing weight, just looking rough, man. But he asked permission, and they granted it, for him to grow a garden out behind the old folks' home. And you know, that picked him up. That made him feel so much better. It made him so much more active and healthy, that he went on to live, like, oh gosh, I want to say probably another 10 years, something like that. He lived to be 99 years old. And, you know, and the benefit was also that, you know, he was able to get food. And keep in mind, this is in the 80s. Again, all this was going on back in the 80s. So, you know, they were struggling too, I'm sure. But he was able to bring that food in and help to feed all the other residents with nice, healthy, nutritious food. But even more importantly, it actually made him healthier by doing it. The activity itself of gardening is a very healthy and natural way to relieve stress, to improve your outlook on life, to give you something to look forward to. I mean, and then like I said, you know, there are studies, apparently, which I cannot quote because I don't remember exactly what they were, but that showed that just the act of getting your hands in the dirt, or even getting your feet in the dirt, believe it or not, actually helps to release certain chemicals in your body, which are actually very healthful and really help you to relieve stress. I mean, it's one of the only jobs I can think of that you could possibly do that doesn't make you more stressed out. And you know, I know, you know, people got t-shirts and such and say, yeah, my garden is my happy place. It really is. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I have a very happy life. I've got a good family, got a great wife, I've got, you know, income set up to where I'm not going to have to worry about groceries unless things get real bad. So I'm fairly stress-free. But still, I mean, if I didn't have this garden, if I wasn't out here digging in the dirt with all the bad habits I have, shit, I probably would have already been dead. I mean, I remember when I got out of the Navy, one of the things they told you is that the average lifespan for a person, a military person who retires, is like 5 to 10 years after they retire. Well, this will be my 13th year since retirement, and I'm still alive, despite all of my bad habits and such. So I highly recommend it. I cannot tell you enough how much I think that it really ought to be something that you consider doing wherever possible. Like I said, it's great for the environment. That's that much less stuff that has to be shipped in from overseas, and even from California, or even the farm down the road. Even that local produce, while it doesn't use as much gas, it still requires gasoline to get it from there to here. Whereas mine, when I want a salad, I go out in the backyard in my garden and I go cut me a salad. Alright, well, I'm done weeding this, so I guess I should stop yakking. I appreciate y'all sticking around and listening if you have been. Which obviously you wouldn't be hearing this if you hadn't. And I want you to know that one of the reasons I do this is in hopes that it will begin a discussion, that we could have a chat and talk about, maybe even argue about what I've talked about, and that it might give you some food for thought, and then hopefully you'd be willing to share those thoughts. Now, if not, that's fine. I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but I would love to have a little bit of verbal intercourse over some of the subjects I've talked about today. I will tell you that despite everything I have said, the world is not ending. The world is not going to be ending anytime real soon, in my opinion. However, I think the world is changing. I think that things are different and getting more different by the day. And I think that to not recognize those differences, not recognize those changes for what they are and what they could mean, would be a critical mistake at this point in the game. So, grow yourself a garden. Get things going on. Get some food growing in your backyard. It'll relieve your stress. It'll keep you fed. And all in all, and it'll help the environment. And all in all, it's just a win-win. All right. There might be more productive ways to make a buck, but there's probably no better, more productive way to make a good life. All right. Thanks for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe, and let me know what you think. But most importantly, talk to me. Tell me what you think. Give me your opinion on the subject, and let's have a discussion. All right. Thanks once again. Y'all take care. And grow something.